Today we're going to do a standalone review on The Vanished Birds, a book that has stolen my heart. I love this book so much I need to buy myself a copy. I have not done so yet, but I also wanted to get this review done. So as I do at the top of all of my reviews, I'm going to first talk about my experience, then get into the nitty-gritty of the things that I liked, in this case liked and loved. I don't have many critiques, but I can highlight some things that I think were good for me that wouldn't be good maybe for other readers. So, my experience, I buddy read this with my friend Laura from A Book Circus, similar to how we buddy read The Prey of Gods last year, which was also fantastic. And also kind of, sort of, like, I finished it, but Evie's reading it, so I get to hear all of Evie's thoughts. So it's like, sort of a buddy read with Evie, which buddy reads are always really fun. You get to talk with someone real time and, like, really, like, gush about your emotions. And this was an emotional read. And I think that's part of my love of it, but not the only thing I love about it, but it was so emotional. And I did reading sprints with my patrons, and I was just like, guys, this book's doing things, and I don't know what's gonna happen, but it's doing things. So that was my experience. That's why it has such a glowing rating from me, is because it gave me those feelings that I am always a sucker for when I read. Now, I don't even know how to give a synopsis for this book, even if that was something I typically do. So I did write down in my notes, synopsis, and I thought, and I'm like, no, we're not gonna try. This book does have a plot, and part of my emotions were related to plot things. But this is a book that really benefits from going and knowing the vibe of it, but not necessarily the details of who you are with and who you are meeting and what they're doing and what's the goal. Like, that's not as important. Because Laura and I and Evie, we all started this and we were just like, I don't know what's happening, but I'm liking it. That was what happened when we picked up chapter 1. And I think largely that's because of how good at writing this author is. So his writing has this thing, like with Jemison, where there is a certain style to it, where it definitely is not economical or brief or to the point. It's not like a background writing style. It definitely has a style that I can't pinpoint because it flows really well in my head. Like, it definitely has descriptive words. It's definitely poetic at times, but it's also, for me, poetic in a way that it didn't make the reading experience dense. It wasn't a dense writing style whatsoever for my experience. So I think that is one of those things where it's like, that's a how does your brain work with this writing style situation, which is unique to every individual. For me, this is up there on my authors of, I will now try out everything you write because your writing style and my brain get along. This is fantastic. So it's up there with like Karen Lord and Kay Jemison, like those authors for me and how I read. Also Ted Chiang and Ken Liu. Like, these are all authors who, like, when they wordsmith, it works really well. And those are all very different authors, but it's what it was reminding me of. And in his somehow ability to write, he will introduce characters that you really only see for one chapter, but these are long chapters. They're like 30 to 50 page chapters at times. And you are so instantly invested in them and their life. And it's not because big D things are happening. You're really watching a lot of slice of life stuff in this book. A lot of this book is slice of life with an overarching goal. And it's not quite episodic like A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, but it definitely isn't like these people are doing really dramatic things. You're just watching them live and watching them grow while they live, is a lot of what this book is. But I loved and was connected to every character that was put on this page. And in some ways you can see the influences of works like Hyperion, which I do believe was an inspiration for this, where you at times feel like you're reading connected short stories when you start this book until you realize what is connecting all of these short stories together. There's even a section where something is written in a letters diaries format, which has to be a homage to the second chapter of Hyperion, especially since I read articles where the author said they were pulling from this. And it's that because of that, you get this huge scope. You get to go from Earth, like 100 years from now Earth, to like thousands of years of now in space. And somehow, even though it's only a 390-page book, it's not too much. And you really get to look at the themes of what does it mean when space travel costs a time debt, and how do you handle that? Because in this universe, when you travel in space, you lose time when you go into the fold, which is kind of what I think the cover is showing. And so that was a great theme. There's amazing themes about corporations and how the greed and power of corporations now would expand in space. And I say all of this, but none of these things were the focal point. They existed, but they weren't very loud, to me at least. I think your mileage may vary there, but for me, it was definitely something I noticed because of how it was affecting my characters, and not because someone was monologuing or thinking about these things. It was very much show and not tell in its theming, which I really like how he crafted that. I think that it was amazing. So beautiful writing, characters I care to the ends of the earth about. And then, like I said, there were plot moments that I was just like, I have no clue what's going to happen and how we're going to resolve this. And I'm so stressed because I care so much. I was just so emotionally invested. And that is a part that I cannot tell if you, as a reader, when you pick this up, will have that. For me, it was something about his writing and the way he was able to make this empathy within me for these characters and the things they were going through. And there are some tropes that he subverts right out the gate that I really wasn't expecting. This work also has a great diverse cast of characters in terms of sexual orientation and also just racial and ethnic backgrounds. I really love seeing that in my sci-fi works. And yeah, I don't know how else to say that I really liked it. Something, though, that that will make or break some people's experience is the ending. And we all know I'm an endings person. I love endings, good, bad. I mean, I love good endings, but bad endings mess my time. And I won't say that the ending was the strongest part, but I actually really liked the urgency of the ending, even though it became a little more abstract and cerebral than the parts up to that point. Things felt a bit more concrete, but I think it really ties into this other theme that I was kind of latching onto, and I can't really verbalize it because I would be afraid of spoiling things, but also like it was more of a vibe or feeling, because if ever there was a soft sci-fi, this is a soft sci-fi. The way that we are exploring this thing that is happening, that I'm being vague about because I don't want to spoil it, is not going to be, here are the rules and how physics was changed to allow this to happen. It doesn't break whatever rules it does set up, but you don't understand how it works. You couldn't make formulas for it. It is the opposite of a hard magic system if we're comparing it to that. And I think that bleeds into the end of the book and how we get to experience what our characters are going through in this last section. And it's one of those things where it's the reason I want to reread it is to reread that ending, but also re-experience this whole journey again, because it was just beautiful. I loved reading it. I loved the found family aspects that were in here. It's just, this was a book that was done dirty by 2020 because it is stellar. And I think it works for a wide range of people. Like, I think it works for people who do like soft sci-fi like me with things in space. Like, I think there are plenty of people who like Karen Lord and Becky Chambers who will latch on to a lot of the hopeful vibes in this book. But I think it also works really well for people who are into literary fiction, not necessarily the very dense, you gotta pick apart all the metaphors literary fiction, but just words and sentences that are beautiful for the sake of being beautiful. I think that works really well for that group of people because, like I said, the sci-fi is not so rigorous that I think the world building, the world building is not necessarily super clear, but I don't think it was super clear for me as a seasoned sci-fi reader either. So I think you just kind of get to see our world and what would naturally occur after some things went in motion. Another thing I loved, just as like a sci-fi nerd who like reads classics, is there are so many tropes in here that I can't discuss that I'm like, oh, I remember when that trope was done in this work by this author and I didn't love XYZ about it, and I love how it's being handled here. And so I could feel that this author, like me, has read so many of these other works, and he took the stuff that he really liked and put them in here, and I really liked those things. So for me, this is a perfect book. I mean, if ever there is a perfect book, and one of my new favorite sci-fis of the year. We all know that I rate sci-fis harsher than fantasy for some reason, and so this one I am proud to give 5 out of 5 stars, going to be buying a copy, putting it on my shelf, and rereading one day. Let me know if you've read this book, if you plan to read it. If you have questions, like if you don't care about spoilers and would like to know certain tropes and mechanisms and more concrete details about the plot, I can let you know, I just truly believe that the less you know, the more fun the discovery is. But I understand sometimes if you're like, it's almost on my want to read list, but I think I need to know a little bit more of the buzzwords. I will gladly give that information to you. But otherwise, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.